I absolutely hate what deadmau5 calls the potato head of EDM. How much do you love BT Sport at the moment? Resampling was used to twist a sound. Moved from live to Bitwig. I'm completely torn. Speaking of drones, how are they made? Nothing wrong with a long rant, my man. Good, because it feels like this is another one. Hey guys, welcome to the Kane audio vlog. It's Friday, it's time for another Ask Me Anything. Usual rules apply. Comment anything you want below this video and I'll get back to you in next week's video. Before I move on to last week's comments, let me think. House admin. This time last week my Mousetrap EP Stoic came out. I've had really good feedback on that, so thank you very much. I genuinely do appreciate the good feedback. What else did I mention? Can't remember. Oh well. Couldn't even tell you what I've been doing this week either. However, I have updated the Spotify playlist. If any of you follow, it's right there, Dom, Kane and Friends. I've literally just updated the playlist with it. 3 hours and 50 minutes of new music. So yeah, I'll stick a link below this video. Please do go check it out and give it a follow. Yeah, it's kind of a cool playlist really, because it's kind of, I guess as a DJ I've always traditionally put together promo mixes and stuff like that over the years, and it's not so much now, but especially when I was DJing a lot, and I always enjoyed doing promo mixes and putting them together, and yeah, and this is kind of like a laid back version of that, because the Spotify playlist that I'm doing, it's not really music I play at gigs, probably not music I would ever choose to play at gigs or anything like that. They're more tracks that I'm just really liking the direction of, or whatever, in the studio, in the car, wherever. So yeah, something a little bit different, which is good. In fact, just having a look here, I can't see there's anything else I need to update on, so I think we're all good. Yeah, let's crack on with last week's questions. Let's see what we've got. James Hyton, love this AMA, shows people that you're passionate. Thank you very much. I absolutely hate what deadmau5 calls the potato head of EDM. I think I've heard someone reference that. Something about, I don't know, I think it's probably what I call copy-paste music. Similar to what you've already mentioned, if an artist gets too big too quick, it simply puts me right off. Although 9 times out of 10, I wouldn't really like the stuff they're putting out anyway. It's such a shitty manufactured sound stemming from several festival artists all jumping on the same wagon with next to no originality. Pisses me right off. This is why I love Mousetrap label so much. You simply won't get away with shit mentioned above. You, along with many others, are original and have remained so, regardless of a lot of other people just copying other people. Yes, I said copying, lol. Mousetrap, in my opinion, signs artists. A lot of other well-known organisations sign puppets. Yeah, I want to disagree, but I kind of agree, really. So sorry for the rant, but completely agree with you, so thought I'd voice it. No worries. High five. Keep up the great work, mate. Yeah, I 100% agree, to be honest, and I don't want to agree, but it does feel like there are, not all labels, but a hell of a lot of labels out there who are kind of signing anyone because that person is making a sound that is fashionable right now. Whereas I think Mousetrap have, I don't even want to say a sound, a theme, I suppose, running through the label, and I think it doesn't matter which artist you listen to on the Mousetrap label. You know, 90% of the releases from Mousetrap have something in common with each other, and that thing could be something totally different between two comparisons, but there's definitely a theme of some sort amongst there. Yeah, so it's a tricky one to sort of explain, but yeah, 100% agree. Daily Patcher, cheers for the amazing release. Stoic is fantastic. Thank you very much. Andrew Hollis, drone, high five. A couple of questions. One, how much do you love BT Sport at the moment? So, you obviously follow me on Twitter. Yeah, I was pissed off about that, and yeah, still am. For those of you that don't know, I love boxing and UFC and have always followed both boxing and UFC. I pay for UFC Fight Pass, and I pay for BT Sports app on my phone. And BT Sport have the UK exclusive rights to the main card of every UFC event. And it gets blacked out on the UFC Fight Pass, so I can't watch the event on Fight Pass, but I can watch the preliminary events on Fight Pass, and then I have to swap to BT Sport. However, the vast majority of the events are on at 4 o'clock in the morning here, and they don't finish till 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, so I tend to watch them on a Sunday rather than Saturday night. And yeah, BT Sport have basically destroyed it for me, because their app, they upload a bunch of clips and thumbnails and highlight reels from the night before, giving away all the results of all the fights without actually uploading the whole main event, and that takes them another 24 hours. So if I go to check the BT Sport app, they just ruin it for me. And now they've announced that they're going to go pay-per-view as well, so paying for the app is now pointless. And yeah, the whole thing's just bullshit anyway. So I went on a bit of a Twitter rampage and basically pointed out that I pay for all of these things and they're all useless, and I can understand how people pirate this stuff. Anyway, question 2. Question on the topic of resampling. When hardware samplers were the go-to kit, resampling was used to twist a sound, i.e. bassline, and give it a unique tone. How could you emulate that in the box? So, okay, rewind a second. Resampling, hardware samplers, give it a unique tone. I'm not convinced that sampling gave anything a tone. Or not on purpose anyway. I mean, you had things like the MPCs and whatever, but you could only ever record on a lot of these samplers. I remember the first sampler I ever used, a mate of mine, Mark, can't remember his surname, sorry, but this is 20 plus years ago. He got given a record deal with a very big label with his band, and they got given, I think it was like $100,000 to record an album, which I don't think they even recorded in the end, but everything went to shit. But anyway, he bought a sampler, and I think you could record like 3 or 4 seconds of audio on that sampler, and then MIDI trigger it basically, and that's basically all you could do. It was pretty shit. So it took a long time before resampling and changing tones and things ever happened. And I guess they did kind of have their character, but that wasn't it. I think it's an interesting thing that we now look at, like I think compressors are a better example, where we now look at vintage compressors having this classic tone and character. Truth be known that 30 years ago, when these whatever compressors were around, people knew they were shit. They didn't want that character. They didn't want that tone necessarily. The vast majority of them, it was just budget restrictions. You were just dumped with this tone because that's all you could afford, unless you were getting like a Fairchild or something and spending crazy amounts of money on compressors. That was a tone and character that people liked. But the vast majority of if you look at Waves plugins, there's quite often a analog button, and it just adds a little bit of hiss or something like that, an undertone to the sound. you didn't want that in the 80s, 90s, whatever. That was shit, and you knew it. I think it's funny that people try to recreate that now when, we hated it then. Why do we love it now? But whatever. Anyway, is it a case of process, bounce down and repeat? Once done, load the bounced audio across layers in the sampler. So you wouldn't have been able to bounce audio across layers necessarily. Or do you use just the one sound source and make use of chained effects split across frequency ranges, etc.? Also, do you use that technique these days? So again, I know that what you're talking about is what we think today is a really simple thing, like chained effects split across frequency ranges. 20 years ago, that was just a pipe dream, being able to set things like the mid-side of a signal, that was mind-blowing back then. Yes, we could do mid-side recording using multiple microphones, but if you wanted to do mid-side effects on something like a bass line, forget about it. It didn't enter anyone's head that you could do that in any way, shape or form, unless you were just doing really out there techniques. I get that you're saying about frequency ranges, not mid-side, which is different, but I think even things like treating things in certain frequency ranges without having separate crossover signal paths or splitting, you'd have to split the signal. If you think about the analog signal path of something to split, to treat different frequency ranges. Again, let's talk about a bass line. Let's say it's a slap funk bass that you've sampled, and you want to treat the high end different to the low end. So just two frequency ranges. Again, today, piece of piss. Like, you don't even have to think about how to do that, do you? You can send it to two channels on your workstation. You can stick a high pass in one channel, a low pass in the other channel, and then stick in whatever effects. Hell, you can pretty much just drag and drop EQ5 and then treat things differently in the effects chain anyway. It's so easy. There is a multitude of different ways of doing that. Back in the days of early samplers, and we're talking sort of 90s period, late 90s, if you wanted to treat two different frequency bands of that slap bass differently, you'd need to take two audio feeds out and then send those audio feeds to two different equalizers. And most people didn't own most people didn't own one equalizer, let alone two. And then send them to separate racks and then mix them before they then get fed back into whatever your workstation is, which is probably either an 8-tracker, cassette, or reel-to-reel, or late 90s moving into early noughties, you'd have maybe had a computer with some sort of MIDI capability, maybe some audio recording techniques, something like that, or of course back into a sampler, which would have meant you'd need two samplers, two EQs, two racks of effects. We're talking, tens of thousands of pounds worth of gear, just to treat a simple bass line. So, in terms of sampling, you just wouldn't believe the leaps forward in time that we've had in the last 10 years. It's been crazy. So in terms of, do you use those techniques these days? I mean, no, because I don't think we used those techniques back then, because it was so complicated. What we do now is way beyond our dreams 20 years ago. And I think that's a really important point to make. People talk about analog equipment being crazy complicated and whatever. It wasn't. I don't think it was that complicated. It was really simple, to be honest. It was just really fucking expensive. And that's what made it complicated. I think what we do today is way more complicated. And I think, you guys who've only grown up with digital workstations, computers, laptops, whatever, you guys are way more advanced than the engineers back in the 90s, if I'm honest. There's just I don't know, there's just a difference in the end result these days. How you view that is up to you, I guess. So that's that. Dream State 42. Hi Dom, great video and quite an interesting rant, as usual. I've seen across your videos that you've moved from Live to Bitwig. I'm completely torn between the two. I love Bitwig's more modern workflow, shortcuts, routing, pop-up browser, but also love Live's general feeling and small things. Play from selection, stock plugins, automation in 10.1. Help me please. Okay, so more seriously, what made you ultimately move over? Also, drones, high five. Thanks a lot. Have a great weekend. You too. So I'm always kind of careful with recommending workstations, because I always sort of say it really kind of doesn't matter which one you go for, I guess, because whichever one you pick up, whether it be Ableton, Bitwig, Logic, Reason, Fruity Loops, I've never tried it but I hear it's good. At the end of the day, there are people from every walk of life in every genre making amazing music on all of these workstations. I don't think much is impossible when it comes to any of these workstations. There are not huge differences in the end result, so I'm always sort of wary of recommending. For me, the reason I moved over to Bitwig, in all honesty, was because I was curious and I knew the guys making Bitwig. So I just wanted to try out. I just fell in love with it. Also, at the time, Ableton had some fundamental issues that Bitwig had solved in the basic foundations of MIDI. I won't go into detail. I don't think they're any longer any issues, but they were at the time. So that kind of made me move to Bitwig. I am also incredibly grateful that the guys at Bitwig also implemented a lot of my suggestions early on. So things like being able to set a default gain value of a new channel. That meant the world to me, because I set all my channels to be minus 10 dB. Having the K20 metering system was another one I suggested, and that got implemented pretty quickly. So I'm always going to be biased towards Bitwig, if I'm honest. But I also think I'm quite rightly biased towards Bitwig because they're awesome. However, looking at the new version 3 and the grid, by the way, I will try and do another video on that as well at some point, because I've been flicking through some of the presets and they're just incredible. So I think, Ableton, for example, tried doing the whole Max for Live system and it was all right. But Max MSP had been around for a long time before Ableton and before Max for Live. So when it came to, I was a Max MSP user. So when they introduced Max for Live, I thought, brilliant, this is it. This is going to change everything. And it kind of changed things, but was also kind of awkward because there were two systems that had already covered their own ground. They already did their own thing, and I felt that merging them together just it felt a bit mashed, and the workflow just didn't quite fit me. Whereas Bitwig, now they've launched the grid, that workflow just totally works because it's been built from the ground up. And this is kind of the point I'm saying about Bitwig. For me, the biggest selling point of Bitwig for anyone interested in changing a workstation, and I will also say, if you love your current workstation, whatever it is, don't change. You don't need to. Nothing is going to change your life. But if you're contemplating Bitwig, I'd say give it a go. But you need to really dig deep, because some of the things that Bitwig is capable of, I think, are almost impossible to implement on other workstations without them rebuilding the entire thing from the ground up. And this is kind of Bitwig's big advantage, is the fact that they're much newer than all the others. All the others have been around a lot longer, and technology has changed. In fact, as we were just saying about samplers, look, in fact, there we go. Talk about full circles there. Talking about samplers, and I was saying earlier about how sampling methods and processes have changed dramatically over the last 10 years. And you look at a sampler, the built-in sampler in Ableton, Logic, Pro Tools, whatever, you know. I hate Pro Tools, by the way, or I hate the makers of Pro Tools, the company Avid. They're just, I won't get into that. So I think if you look at samplers and compare them all, and then compare the Bitwig built-in sampler, the stuff it can do is just drastically different to all the others. It can do so much more. And, you know, you're on YouTube right now. Pause this video, type in Bitwig sampler and have a look. I think it was version 2.5 or something they launched this latest sampler. And the stuff it can do is ridiculous. You know, things that we never dreamt of doing with a sampler all of, 5 years ago. So I think that's a huge advantage for Bitwig. The fact that they are just so much newer than any other workstation, and that puts them in a much better position because they can build things from the ground up for the first time, knowing where technology is currently moving. So that's a huge deal. Yeah, I think that hopefully answers your question, but probably doesn't help. So yeah, if you're completely torn between the two, personally, I would say go with Bitwig. I think people are a bit more passionate about Bitwig as well, maybe because it's newer. Maybe they won't be in 5 years' time. Who knows? It could all go tits up at any point for any of them. And that's kind of the point. So just go with whatever your heart says, I guess. I personally think, for me, the workflow speeds of Bitwig versus Ableton, you know, my workflow is far faster on Bitwig now than it ever was with Ableton. And I think that, for me, is an important factor anyway. So yeah, there we go. That's another rant. Ricky John, Drone, high five. Nothing wrong with a long rant, my man. Good, because it feels like this is another one. I personally enjoy hearing what you have to say. Loving the new EP, particularly Downforce. Cheers. I remember hearing parts of it in another one of your videos. Been excited since. Yeah, funnily enough, I got a copyright claim come through on YouTube for one of my videos that now it's come out and registered with Mousetrap. Obviously it came as like an automatic copyright claim, which is fine. I'm not monetizing it anyway. Yeah, so much atmosphere. Thank you very much. No questions this week. Thanks always for another AMA and great work on the EP. Yeah, I've been getting great feedback, and I like the fact that a lot of people have given me good feedback on Downforce, because I sort of put it there as a third track to a 2-track EP, really. So Stoic and Tunnel Run were the big ones. They were the ones for the DJs, I suppose, even though Stoic, I purposefully put in a 2-minute long intro, knowing that DJs will hate me forever. But Downforce, I wrote it years ago, and it was one of those ones that I always really liked, and I never really nailed the mix, and it was just never 100% finished. And yeah, and then when I sort of got to doing this EP, I'd worked on a different third track, which was in line with Stoic and Tunnel Run, and then I ended up sort of going, you know what, actually I don't want to do this. I think I'd been doing these AMAs actually, and I'd been talking about an album telling a story and having a journey and all of that. And I kind of felt like this EP, I should sort of put my money where my mouth is, and maybe in this EP throw in a little curveball, I guess. So that's exactly what I did, and luckily it's paid off because people like it. And I was kind of a bit wary that people might not like it, because if I'm totally honest, I think a lot of the Mousetrap fans, although Mousetrap fans I think are probably some of the most open-minded fans out there, I think they're also easily displeased as well. So I'm glad that wasn't the case, and actually that's kind of given me a little bit of confidence about my album that I have started working on now, and I've kind of narrowed it down to about 20 tracks, but that will double and then quarter. So the way an album generally works is you sort of put together 40 tracks and you go, right, what are the best 12, 13, 14, which ones really fit what you're trying to achieve, because of course if you were to write 40 tracks in a row right now, there's going to be some kind of chaos in there, because one of your tracks will have just gone way off on a tangent. One of your other tracks might go off in a completely different direction. And as an album, as a single large body of work, how do you fit those together? So the way you tend to do that is write too many tracks and then just take out the ones that don't quite fit the narrative you're trying to get across. I have, however, talking of narrative, there is a very specific narrative for this album, and I'm speaking to the guys at Mousetrap next week about it, because I'm not 100% sure they're even going to like this album, because of my sort of favourite, I think I've narrowed it down to like 14 tracks are my favourites so far, and of those there aren't, I'd say probably only half of them even have a kick drum. They're all draft at the moment, so they could have kick drums, but there are definitely several in the album that don't really have any drum work other than a little bit of gentle percussion, and it kind of goes off in a totally different direction. And I feel like that's maybe where I'm heading, but who knows. And that's again why I'm talking about downforce. That's why I put it in this EP, and I felt it was important to do that, because I felt it was important to get across a kind of direction I'm heading, I guess. So yeah, there we go, another rant. In fact, so much of a rant, I can see my camera is about to hit the 30-minute mark, so I'm just going to hit reset on that, otherwise it stops itself. And I'm back. Right, so Jockamaya, Drone, high five. Love your rants. I always glean something useful from them. I'm having kick envy with your new EP. Tunnel Run is my new favourite track, no question. Thank you very much. Yeah, Tunnel Run's just a banger, basically, and I kind of wanted it to just be dark and driving and just something, well, it's my usual thing, I think, isn't it? Dark and driving. Yeah, so thank you very much. Castronaut Music, 2255, here at 880 subs, 80k by next year for sure. I doubt that very much, but it'd be nice if that was true. Zombo, nice video, Dom. Speaking of drones, how are they made? I'm having some trouble making drones. Any tips? Drones in music, not flying ones. Yeah. Funnily enough, I used to make drones, the flying ones, and that was a good hobby until the whole world started going drone mad. In terms of drones, how do you make them? I would say play with LFOs. Is probably my best tip for making drones. I guess so I'll give you an example of a drone I've been using in a couple of different tracks recently. It's done on the Moog, but you can do it on anything really. I literally set up, I think, a triangle saw maybe, or triangle, whatever, something like that, a waveform on one oscillator, and pretty much identical waveform on the second oscillator, and just fine tune one of the oscillators to be slightly off, and then just listen to them. Just hold a note down and listen to them, and you'll hear that they start going off beat to each other. So as one sine wave is going up, the other one might be going down, and that just flutters and makes the other one cancel out. Throw in some big wet reverb, and then maybe you assign an LFO to a filter, but have the filter, a low pass filter, just open and close very slightly and make it not synchronized with the beats. Set it to, I don't know, like half a hertz or something, so it's really slowly, just gently oscillating open and closed, and not making a huge difference. Then maybe assign another LFO to, I don't know, the resonance amount, and just every now and then let that spike up so it's almost audible. It is audible, but not having a drastic effect. And it's all about being subtle and having things slowly evolving over time. Maybe bring in a sub oscillator and just change the waveform of that or something, so that every 8 to 16 bars it sweeps through sine, saw, triangle, whatever, you know, and those are the things that make a big difference. Then just stick a load of sidechain on, and then keep it really low in the mix, and there you go, you got yourself a drone. Someone calls Man Ostling or Oostling, just spam reverb and everything will be fine. Sure, okay. Mousetrap, smile, high five. BWO official drone, high five. Man Ostling, quality content. St. Nicholas, drone, high five. And there we go. That's it, my friends. I will see you again this time next week. If you've made it this far into the video, then you deserve a medal. And I'm going to say, to prove that you've made it this far into this week's video, comment the word Tony, because there's a video here that's Tony Hawk's one piece of advice for success. So comment the word Tony. I'll see you next week. Cheers.